Hi guys, welcome back to the Deep Tech stage. Just to remind you, I'm Olga and I will be your host for today for this stage. Also tomorrow you will see me. And now that we have fed our bodies, and I think a few of us might still continue doing that, I do hope you will be coming here now, people. If you hear my voice, please join. And yes, it is now time for our brain to feast again. And in the morning, we had a chance to listen to Inma Martinez, a world-known pioneer of digitalization and AI, a true visionary and also an author of 2 books, which zoom into the 5th industrial revolution, the automation industry, and space commercialization, and many, many other things. And I'm happy to call Inma back on stage for a 30-minute Ask Me Anything session. For that, we will be taking questions for the audience. Yes, please join me, Inma. And I will also be monitoring the Mito app. So those of you guys who are joining remotely, please shoot your questions. I will be sure to pay attention. Like Inma, the part of me, the evil part of me, actually is hoping that there will be no questions, so I will have you all to myself. but we shall see. So nice of you to join. And how are you feeling so far?
I'm great. I've been going around looking at the expo and hoping to meet entrepreneurs.
Right. Are you here for both days of the conference? Or?
I am almost to the end.
Okay, so please take note, those people who would like to catch Inma somewhere in the corridor perhaps, or in the networking space. So, right, we have 30 minutes for the questions. But before we jump into that, I hope you don't mind a small warm-up. A small warm-up, I prepared a few questions which are kind of yes, no, or black and white. You choose one option without too much thinking, okay, right, about it. I hope I will not embarrass myself with these questions, but let's start. So, artificial intelligence, choice or necessity?
Necessity.
Perfect morning, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Humanoid robots, scary or exciting?
Super scary.
Tesla, overpriced or too overpriced?
Way too overpriced.
That's the third option, right? Okay, future of data storage, centralized warehouse or decentralized mesh?
Totally decentralized. It's called the data mesh.
The data mesh. 100 years from now, Moon is the hottest new touristic spot or still a dream?
No, Moon is the working space of scientists. It's not nice to be on the Moon.
So honeymoon will not happen on the Moon?
No, no. It's probably going to be on a floating hotel circumnavigating Earth so that we can look at the nice bits. Right.
Next one. COVID pandemic, waste of time or opportunity to regroup?
It's been a massive opportunity. We have realized of loads of things that were wrong.
Right. Tech we use every day, convenience or the end of privacy?
The actual tech is very convenient. The use of the data is the end of privacy.
Good. Then decompressing after a tough day, good book or movie?
Oh, totally Netflix, Disney, I have all of them.
Cybersecurity, your own individual problem or our collective responsibility?
Collective responsibility.
And the last one, leadership of the 21st century, process-oriented or result-oriented?
Result-oriented.
And let's use this last question to transition into the more serious, so to say, part of our discussion and the questions. So I would also like you to comment more on this leadership of the 21st century. When we look around us, what's happening to us? Who is in power? Who has the decision-making? Where we are going as humanity? Are we deviating from something which is important and true? And going into abyss, into nowhere, or actually are we going towards something? What is your assessment, leadership of 21st century?
Great question. So in past centuries, the way we used to measure progress was quantitative. So we looked at how many patents, how many inventions, how many new products had been created in 100 years. So then we're like, oh, well, we did more than in the 19th century, so we are a progressive society, yeah? When the 21st century arrived, in just the first 14 years, we totally surpassed the figure of the 20th century. And we all in the scientific community looked around and thought, this is not about numbers. It's not about counting quantitative values. It's about solving real problems. That's why the 21st century is now more than ever beginning to address the issues, confront the challenges. It's not about science per science say, or, oh, what a cool new unicorn social media. No, 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 no. Companies are now changing the way they create shareholder value, because it's all about creating value for clients, for the people, for the planet, for your stakeholders. So it's not about let's file for 20,000 new patents like the old Cisco model. It's let's demonstrate that we can solve problems, address issues, which is why governments have approached the private sector, the large corporations, in help us tackle the world's issues. A green economy, sustainability, the fact that AI needs to be put in the world with ethics, that the data that is gathered collectively needs to be for the highest benefit of the people, otherwise it should be illegal. So if you look around, this is the time in which governments and companies are really addressing the real issues that we need to fix so that we can progress in this century. The automotive industry was happily building fossil fuel engines because the one objective that governments impose, make the car safe, they already sorted in the 70s and the 80s, yeah? But no, the government said, no, you need to address CO2 emissions. Oh, well, thank you very much. Another big problem to solve.
A nice push.
Exactly. So we are at the gates of a new civilization that mixes government objectives with the talent and the innovation that the private sector can bring in addressing our societal problems. It's not about building products, it's about fixing life.
Right, so you do believe we are at the gate to enter that,
a new
that
transformation. Yeah.
Because some might think that we are exiting, you know, the phase of so many innovations, breakthroughs. Some people are asking the question, what is there left to invent? You know, it's been such a interesting period of technological breakthroughs. What's left there? There will be only marginal impact from the next technology. But then some
and
say
also,
that
you know, the famous gig economy that made all the venture capitalists super happy. Oh, the Deliveroo, yes. Well, the gig economy is beginning to encounter this new emerging sentiment, which is everything is fantastic, but if it's not sustainable, if it doesn't help build the pathway to a green economy, we don't want it. So, for example, in logistics, the new gig economy is those companies that do the last mile between a little corner shop and your flat. So rather than you walking to 10 minutes down the road and buying a drink and some chips, you call a little company that brings that to you. Well, fantastic, yeah? All of this startup raising tons of money until the local cities, municipalities in Holland, in London, some neighborhoods are forbidding these companies to operate because all of a sudden the neighborhood is full of bikers and mopeds and lots of traffic and it's a nuisance. So lovely business model doesn't work in the 21st century green sustainable economy. So the agendas are beginning to steer all of the innovation towards these paths of how we want society to be. Better life, more quality, green, sustainable.
So very human-centered.
Very human-centered. Very human-centered.
I'm happy that we are thinking about
super human-centric.
Right. Very good. I must be checking Mito app, so I will be doing exactly that. But are we having any questions at the moment already in the audience? You please raise your hand. I'm a little bit blinded. Sorry. Yeah. Please go ahead. We'll take the first question over here. If I could be assisted with a microphone. Okay. So let's change the order. We have a question on Mito app, and then we will return to the audience. I do see that the mics are traveling slowly. So Inma Martinez on Mito app is asking, what are the advantages and disadvantages for privately owned space companies against or versus government owned? And what is the future for space companies? Are they moving more to privately owned? Is there this shift?
So when all projects and missions were government funded, and you live in a country where your space industry was heavily funded, let's take NASA, for example. The shuttle program of the 80s costed billions, until the White House decided no more money. And literally, they pulled the rug underneath the feet of NASA, and they stopped funding NASA. So all of the astronaut programs, the rockets were built by private companies, but the actual core, the scientists, the astronauts, was no more money. The astronaut program had to completely change. Rather than getting super tall, strong guys, they had to find less tall, because these guys had to travel to the ISS on the Soyuz rockets, where you sit like this. So everything changed, no money, which is why when the past administration in recent years put funding again, then they rebuilt the let's launch our astronauts with our own rockets, which is the launch that we saw a couple of months ago. So the private sector, on the other hand, is a sector that fundamentally is invested by money that believes in innovation, in opportunity, in competitive advantage. The dynamics are more pressuring, but they make you be better. And this is why the rocket business has been shaken by Jeff Bezos, by Elon Musk, because the traditional builders of rockets, these guys were used to government contracts every year, and no need for innovation. So why do the boosters come back to Earth and you recover the main rocket, the boosters, the fairings, everything? Because they cost money. It's a private company, SpaceX, so you need to recover everything. It's not because he wanted to be super cool, which is what Elon likes to be. It's because it costs money. So the necessity of private sector always forces you to think of better solutions, more cost-effective, less errors, let's reduce the risk, because you have big stakeholders that demand that level of innovation.
But would you say it's healthy?
It's healthier. It makes you be better. It makes you optimize, hire the best people. It's constant challenges and challenges, but you overcome them. So it's very interesting when you come to meetings with companies that have been government funded, and then the new blood coming into the industry that is smart, think about possibilities, because money every day is burning.
Right. And so then would you say that there is this shift, and in future we will see more private initiative in this space?
There is already a shift. The big contracts to send astronauts to the ISS or to send cargoes of satellites are going to the private sector. I mean, they're not going to ULA. Ariane Group, which is the European rockets, they still do a lot of payloads that are for private business, But the competition is going to the private sector because they're offering more competitive prices and they're competing.
They just
they're
make more sense, yeah.
Well, yeah, this is why it's so exciting.
Business is business. All right. Yes, please, let's have the question from the audience. If you could just, say your name and maybe where you come from, startup, investor, whatever it is.
Hi, my name is Clara. I'm joining from Austria, from the Institute for Entrepreneurship Cambridge Tirol, actually co-founded by Hermann Hauser. And we're ecosystem player, educator, and so on. I have a question to build on the tagline from Europe to space. We have heard quite a lot this morning about the topic of European technological sovereignty and how important it is that we create something big as well. And I'm wondering, based on your really broad perspectives you have, what are verticals, topics, or academic centers or universities where you see in Europe there's like big potential which we should like foster and focus on to really create that competitive advantage like in this new field of space?
Any European company working in biomaterials is already on the track. We need new sources of fuel, energy, construction materials that are sustainable. I mean, that is a cosmos that is just beginning to be explored. So in 10, 20 years, the materials we use to build buildings, cars, anything will not be plastic-based, will not be concrete-based, cement-based, which is highly pollutant. So anybody working on that aspect, whether it's for space missions or missions on Earth, is already on a track of this is the hot space now. Telecommunications, sensors, especially communications that happen on the edge, in the ad hoc networks, for example. If we're going to have a bunch of cars with level 5 automation just driving by themselves, think about all of the communications between those cars and the objects on the street and the buildings and the traffic management system and another vehicle. All of the telecoms, and not just about building satellites, it's a hardware and a software, but also AI, the large scalability that AI allows you. So when you look at the European landscape, for example, in artificial intelligence, which is my work, Europe has top universities developing algorithmic models and quantum computing that is not second to the US. It's actually leading in many aspects. So what we need to learn is to bring the knowledge transfer from universities to commercial more rapidly. It's really hard to get the professors teaching in academia letting go of the super innovative postdoctoral projects of people that could potentially be commercial. That's what I do. I take postdocs out of the university. I don't want them to be researchers just until the end of the days. I want that in society applied to an invention. So what we need in Europe is faster knowledge transfer and funding from the EU that is applied to that part of the process. Not so much the research grants, but when you try to build from research to a prototype to a minimum viable product, that's where you still need funding, and then proving it before you really launch a product that is standard. After that, the VC community come flocking because it's zero risk, but it's in the in-between.
So you would say there is a gap?
There is a gap,
right?
There is a gap. One thing is research, like, oh, can I have money for my postdoctoral thesis? There's lots of money for that. But what about, I would like to take my postdoc thesis and turn it into a real technology that is going to be commercial? All of a sudden, there's no money for that.
Right.
Like, where
but
do
once
I go?
You struggle through that,
exactly.
the VCs are waiting at the door, right?
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Okay, good. I hope you were satisfied with the answer. That was a very good one. Any more questions from the audience? Okay. To continue, you touched upon briefly on the automotive industry and the future of cars. And actually in your book, right, you touch upon this very interesting notion of the future of car ownership.
Yeah.
And it, in a way, struck me a little bit. Because in this part of the world, and I would say in the world, this car ownership is is a very important milestone in life, sort of rehearsal for you buying a house or something like that. But then you were talking about how it will be redefined and maybe it will cease to exist. And that really amazed me. Maybe you would like to elaborate a little bit on that and maybe the concept of ownership altogether, not necessarily only cars.
So when the auto industry began to create electric vehicles, the difference between an electric vehicle engine and a fossil fuel petrol engine is very different. You know, a traditional petrol car lasts 400,000 kilometers, and then that engine cracks. And because our cars are highly, digitized, you cannot fix that car with a wrench like your grandfather's car in the old days, yeah? You literally have to let it go. An electric vehicle would last 1,000,000 kilometers. So the way the auto industry makes money is in the servicing. They sell you a car, and then they make roughly about 30,000 euros on top from you owning that car and keeping it and keeping it and keeping it. But that is gone, because if this car is going to last 1,000,000 kilometers, you don't need to fix it that often. So some automakers are thinking the level of innovation every 2 years will be such that people will want to change the car like they change their mobiles every 3-4 years, yeah, average. So with an electric vehicle, you bring it back to the dealership. They take the top of the car and everything except from the chassis, which is where the battery is. The battery probably will be at 99.2 perfect. They put the new model on top and you walk away. That's why leasing, like you don't own that object, you just own the right to drive and drive and drive and always have the top model. So it's a new perspective on, do I really want to own something that is losing value over time? No, I just want to find a price every month that I can pay, and I always drive the top model, the top model. So it's a new mentality.
Right, and some are already implementing
that,
yeah, right?
Already.
Some car manufacturers.
Yeah, yeah.
So you cannot
like
buy.
Volkswagen Group, that's what they envisioned for all their EVs.
Right, no more buying, guys. No more saving money for
no,
the car.
No,
no need. Any questions from the audience at this point? You have a unique chance to ask.
There.
Yes, please. We have a gentleman over there.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question about more IE. We are now exploring the space, and there is a huge impact of the human research. But do we need actually humans in the space to get those materials, to build those colonies? Or is it not enough with the IE? Or it is safe to just send there this special IE, artificial intelligence, that could develop for us these colonies and get mining these materials and building these new materials? Or we need still implement human thinking in, because we saw some new research. If we let IE to develop on their own, and they are building these new unique communication codes that humans could not understand anymore. Is there a threat from that, or on what we should focus, or on what we will focus in the future in cosmic exploration? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. When you train algorithms to do something, and that something is very specific, like automating a bottling plant, is that or that it, then it's very easy. You use machine learning, yeah? But when you then want this machine to learn how to make decisions according to unexpected things, you use deep learning. because you want that intelligence to be a little bit like ours, yeah, that we learn by just empirical knowledge, like, oh, that thing is new and I have to relearn, yeah? So computer vision, you know, how the level 5 cars are just learning to drive on the roads and they're amazing. Somebody, a human, taught this machine to recognize objects. And when we use the internet and we arrive at a website that says, are you a robot? You're like, no. Tell me how many bridges are here. And you go, pam, 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 pam. What we are doing for free is to train Waymo, the level 5 vehicle company owned by Google in Austin, Texas. We have all contributed to Waymo to now know super well that's a bridge, that's a street light, that's a person, that's a dog, that's a bicycle, yeah? If we were to send computer vision robots to do our job, mining or, God knows, driving the trucks on the moon, it would be so hard to teach them everything that they need to learn to recognize. It's easier for us to go. It's easier for us to go. There are certain things where the cognitive ability of humans is superior to a machine. What the machine does very well is once they know what they're doing, they do it supersonic fast. And they do it with tons and tons of data, which our brain would burn if we had to process all of those inputs. So we had to teach them this and this and this and this, and then they'll say, thank you so much, boom. When you train AI, you realize that the machine got it because you see the neural network grow really fast. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, what happened here? And then you go back and check, like, let's make sure that this machine understood it correctly, which is, in AI, we call it bias. Is this machine biased or non-biased? Is it really getting what we want it to do? Our efforts in exploration involve us because we have cognitive abilities that machines don't have. For example, we can pick up biologically that something is weird. Like when mathematicians, you know, any mathematicians in the room, you look at numbers and you somehow, in your gut, you're like, these numbers are funny. Anybody's a math person here? You understand what I mean? It's like, these numbers are funny. This something is not, and it's a knowledge that machines is either black and white. That's why AI is terrible at personalizing, because AI doesn't comprehend our emotions, the way we think. The human race is extremely abstract, and machines are just computational things. So the scientist has to go to the moon surrounded by machines that will do the super hard and dangerous things, but we are the ones that make the puzzle an image. I'm going to get those orbiters there sending me data, and the rovers are going to go that way, and then all of these, I want to see it. Oh, now I know what's going on. We need our thinking is the one at the end, making sense of the puzzle image. And that's why the latest development in AI is about human plus machine collaborations. To learn how to work with the machine does what machines do very, very well, and then we do what we do, which is imagination, intuition, using inductive and deductive thinking at the same time. A machine cannot do that. So the future is about letting AI and machines help us so we can continue to create the progress that we want for humanity to have.
Right.
They're just tools.
So artificial intelligence, yes. Artificial cognition, no such thing.
There is, but it's very limited.
Very limited. So we are still superior, if that was the core of the question, right? The human being. Any more questions? We have some time for the last one, I'm afraid. Right, I see a hand raised.
There's one there.
So, yeah,
Hi, thank you very much, firstly. So you were mentioning training data, right? And bias in training data. So is there any idea, any concept how to avoid that, how to overcome bias in training data? You know, when it comes to recognizing a cat or a bridge, that that might be a minor problem. But when it comes to, let's say, face recognition and consequences out of that, has there been a crime? Oh, you have been there because the camera recognized you. So who asks actually if that face recognition, for instance, is true? And who asks if the training data behind that is true?
Very, very good question. So all of the big companies that were developing facial recognition, so Google, Microsoft, IBM, they all continue to develop that in 2018, around the month of June. All of them at the same time issued the press release. We're not going to do this. Why? Because when a human eye looks at someone's face, because we are biological beings that have DNA that comes all the way from the dinosaurs, yeah? This is why a baby can walk when it's just 10 months, and it's taking 15 years for the Boston robotic robots to walk, yeah? And the baby is like, choo, because we came to this world already with the program in our brain, yeah? A camera looks at the face of someone of Asian or black race and cannot see the nuances because it's just optics, yeah? So it cannot recognize the human. It just sees a blur. Whereas we immediately know of someone that we know or our neighbor, or we recognize using all of our senses, not just the eyes. The eyes actually are very poor. That's why we all wear glasses, yeah? So facial recognition still, with the current technologies that we have available to us, cannot be done. That's why it was abandoned. But the way to test if an algorithm or an intelligence system is really learning correctly and non-biased is all about the data. What data are we feeding into this algorithm? And in AI, we talk about data integrity, meaning that the data is truthful, that nobody has manipulated or tampered with it, which explains why about 5 years ago, all the black box trading in hedge funds, you know, when you have a portfolio management company which a robot is choosing the stocks, yeah? That's a black box trading. It was abandoned. Why? Because market data would go into the box, and the algorithm doesn't know if it's true data or false data. It just assumes it's correct. And some of the portfolios were trading emerging markets stocks from India, from China. And unfortunately, in those markets, sometimes the government, you know, changes the trading volume every day so that it looks very good. The data was manipulated. The data was altered. So this box was telling everybody, yeah, buy Balti Group. But the data was corrupt. It was false. And it began to make suggestions that just didn't make any sense. In AI, we call that overfitting. So when a portfolio manager sits in front of a computer and a Bloomberg and says, I'm going to invest in Balti, they have read research. They have met the CEO. They have a trader that has told them about the flow in the market for the last 6 months. And there's a lot of personal decisions in which you say, yeah, this sounds good. I'm going to do it. So what we are observing is that AI is very good to help you sell the stock, get rid of it, without making the stock lose the price if you dump a huge block in the market. But the choosing, always the human is better. So These are the new discoveries that we are arriving in the last 10 years. AI had a super splendor in 2010. Remember DeepMind when it was bought by Google. But now, 10 years, 15 years later, that's when we're realizing, yeah, AI is good for this, but it's not that great for this or this or this. And the data integrity is what really guarantees that that algorithm is really delivering what we need it to do, that it hasn't been tampered. Especially digital profiling of people these days is a huge data conundrum. Your use of products, if you have an Alexa at home that is constantly listening to what you're saying, is building a profile of you. And really, is that you? Or maybe you want to challenge it. Maybe you eventually says to Amazon, no, don't take my Alexa data for my profile. I demand that you don't do that. And this is what we're approaching. So AI, machine training is a huge scope of innovation, because finally we're beginning to know what it can really do and what it cannot. It's not going to solve all of the problems. We and our imagination is what's going to fix reality with our creativity. And the rest are technological tools.
And I guess on this note, we will be wrapping up. I do encourage you to reach out to Inma while she's still roaming these premises and ask her more questions. Let's use this opportunity that she's in town. I do hope that the neurons in your brain are firing in a new way, so I hope that you're all enlightened in one way or another. I think in one of your interviews you mentioned that after each new learning we have, our brain is not the same again,
It's
right?
true.
So it's different. So now, with the new upgraded brain, we will be getting to the next part of the program. Many thanks, Inma, so much, yes, for this nice Q&A session. A round of applause to Inma.
Thank you.